Hello, everyone. Ron Gerber from Angelbeat, excited to bring you Hussain Shabbir. Hopefully my New York accent pronounced that correctly. Hussain is one of the top technology experts within Virtusa, one of the leading consultancies who've carved out a significant presence early on in the world of AI. One of the things I thought would be interesting for organizations, once you get away from some of the hype around AI and technology, is how do you understand the cost? How do you deliver ROI? That's one of the key differentiations why many Angelbeat attendees use Virtusa. Maybe maybe you could start giving a little background on yourself, Virtusa's organization, and also share how and why organizations, let's say we'll start as a basis for this, if you're an AWS shop, how you use Virtusa to enhance the information provided by tools like Landing Zone, and how those kind of engagements often result in much more strategic initiatives once Virtusa have shown organizations how to manage their IT and cloud spend.
Sure. Thanks, Ron, and thanks for the opportunity. So, yeah, just from a background standpoint, Virtusa, it started off in 1996 based out of Boston with offshore in Sri Lanka, where I am based, and now it has grown to a company which is 35,000 people. In those so many years. Now, I have been with Virtusa. This is the second time around. For the last 10 years, I was with Virtusa previously as well for about 5 years. 3 of those years, I was in US as an architect for one of the clients. In the last 10 years, I've been predominantly focused on cloud and started off with being one of the founding members of the cloud practice in Virtusa. But then, based on the acquisitions that we did and the focus, I started concentrating on, the AWS side of things in the last 4 or 5 years, while previously I was doing Azure and GCP as well. But then coming back to the point where you mentioned about how Landing Zone can be, potentially a strategic first step for Virtusa to get in to clients, and we have done this multiple times. In a very, I believe it's very few instances where we have just done, a Landing Zone implementation, regardless of whether it's AWS or GCP, and then that's it. There's no other work after that. Majority of the time, obviously the client wants to get that comfort factor as to, if we bring Virtusa and they can do the Landing Zone setup in a proper way, compliant to all the regulations of their industry, following all the security best practices, ensuring that the timeline and the cost is not messed up. Once they have that confidence, then they know, okay, now that we have the the foundation in place, we can start giving Virtusa the migration project. Okay, now that we have the foundation in place, let's migrate the applications from on-prem to cloud. Or why don't you all, because we have engineering first as our motto, can you all engineer cloud native, cloud first application for us on top of the foundation that we have built? And then furthermore, it's not only building or migrating the applications that to the cloud, but can you now manage and maintain that environment from an operations standpoint on an ongoing basis to ensure that, whatever that we had told them previously about the cost advantages and the cost efficiencies is also something that we can now, showcase while we are managing it. So we look at, the end-to-end, spectrum from the foundation, building the actual building, so to speak, by moving applications and adding new applications, and then managing and maintaining the entire infrastructure on the cloud.
Now, one interesting thing that I've seen in many instances, Virtusa deals with a combination of the SMB commercial space as well as the world's largest enterprises, is organizations look at their cost. Oftentimes they have a separate integrator. They've heard about Virtusa's expertise in being financially astute as well as technology savvy. They bring in Virtusa to provide some independent assessment of how they should go about managing the cost. There are a whole slew of very qualified AWS Azure integrators, but there are relatively few who can provide the combined insight across cost management as well as technology. So Virtusa is equally liked by the CFO and the CIO in many organizations. And I think that's an interesting comment that when people are listening to this, you want to be aware of. It's helpful to get an independent perspective on your spending and your strategies to ensure that your cost and future integrated technology financial plans are in sync. So once you get in there and you've configured AWS, what are some of the logical things that flow out of that? I know that it's cloud, it's serverless. So those are some of the major initiatives that you look at that can provide both financial and technological benefits to clients?
Yeah. And I just wanted to point out, I think you made a good point, Ron, about coming in after someone else has done some of the work in terms of monitoring the costs and how we can optimize. In a couple of instances, even recently and sometime in the past as well, one thing that we have done is that instead of waiting to win that project, we actually, during the discussion and the proposal phase itself, we show them and we try to get access to their environment and get as much details as possible. But we show them some of the benefits of bringing Virtusa in as another vendor or another integrator to optimize the existing environment. And usually clients are expecting, okay, here's a proposal, we will do this for you when we start the project. But we actually show them one or two areas which we feel helps them understand that, okay, Virtusa is already capable of doing this for us. So during the proposal phase itself, we bring that to the table so that that is one of the advantages that we have. But having said that, yeah, go ahead.
That's a great proof of concept that as you go into it, you can say, here's the benefits you provide. I'm sure that gives a lot of comfort to many of your clients.
Yeah. And then to the main point which you were asking in terms of what else we can do, right? So I think traditionally, 3-4 years back, it was all about, and it still is, but traditionally it's about let's quickly get onto the cloud. Everyone is getting onto the cloud. Let's just do a lift and shift. We don't need to worry too much about modernization. We have a data center lease that is expiring. We have some old hardware that is expiring and coming to end of service life. And now let's quickly move on to the newer kid on the block, which is cloud. While to a certain extent that is still happening, what we are seeing now, clients is, especially clients that already moved to the cloud, is we don't want to just be on the cloud as is. We want to modernize in the process. And now, even one of our marquee clients almost 7-8 years back, and they had a strategy where they did not want to do any lift and shift. We want to take application by application, do proper assessments, let's modernize. But that was very kind of before their time. But we are now seeing a lot of companies saying that, yeah, now we have moved a lot of our applications on the cloud. Can you tell us, based on the assessment that you have done, that these are applications that are giving us a lot of ROI from a business standpoint? Let's pump some of that back again into the application to modernize. And things like serverless, like you mentioned, making it more efficient, even to the point of let's look at mainframe applications, which traditionally no one wants to touch because they're working well. There's no performance issue, and now let's start looking at those also, because it's very difficult to find people to actually manage and maintain that, and it's very costly. So even that we have started. We have a very strategic collaboration with AWS on the mainframe side, where our team members are seated in the same premises as one of the companies that they acquired called Blue Edge, and they're working on projects together to implement mainframe modernization projects for clients.
I think that's very relevant because I could see where this is evolving. A reasonably sized organization has done the easy cloud migration, so to speak.
Yeah.
They're seeing these bills, and AWS and Microsoft are only worth in the trillions of dollars because their services do not come cheap, especially when you start doing more and more in the cloud. So I could see easily the way this evolved. And again, this is for people listening to this video. Oh, I'm looking at my AWS monthly bill. It's a little tricky. I want to bring in Virtusa. I want to see what's going on. But I think the value that Virtusa offers, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just your AWS cost bill. It's also looking at all the other costs of maintenance, all your server maintenance agreements. It's all the cost of internet access. It's the energy and power consumption. So when you're looking at this strategy, and now we're going to the next evolution, is not just lift and shift, it's application modernization versus migration. It's, do we just go to complete cloud native design, microservices, split up all these monolithic tasks? I'm throwing out a bunch of buzzwords, but that's really what's going on. And you need to have a comprehensive assessment of cost across multiple areas: on-prem networking, software design, maintenance, etc. Combine that with an ability to understand in a more narrowly defined perspective cloud cost. And I think that's what Virtusa offers, why there's a great deal of success, because the complexity of actually migrating legacy complicated apps, your mainframes, your Oracle databases, your SAP, CRM, ERP systems that are mission critical, that's really one of the highlights. Maybe, Hussain, maybe, I don't know if you can share one or two customer stories where Virtusa has been brought in and this combination of financial insights and technical expertise has really been so highly valued by one of your clients.
Yeah, sure. And I think one of the things I want to mention here is the efficiencies that you spoke of. It's not only from the cost. While cost is a primary angle, in all of our reports we also show them the ESG benefits, right? Because cloud by default is a platform that will bring you some benefit, but nobody knows what those are. And all the big enterprises that we work with have an ESG kind of mandate from their board. And by moving to the cloud, if we can show them that some of that is already taken care of, that gives us another tick box saying, Virtusa is coming in as a thought leader into not only just looking at the infrastructure side of it, not only looking at it from business side of it, but also from a holistic ESG standpoint.
God, that's a very good point. When you look at, and I've seen various measures like the amount of kilowatts per MIPS or whatever the appropriate ratio is, no on-prem data center can come close to competing with the power efficiency of an AWS, Microsoft, or GCP scenario. I've often heard that Microsoft builds data centers. They put them on the bottom of the ocean floor. As all of you know, Microsoft, AWS, and Google own more fiber than anyone else, a much different world than when the traditional telecom providers like AT&T or Verizon used to own it. Now it's very much the internet providers. And they were talking about designing a big data center at the bottom of the ocean where it's freezing and using ocean temperature to keep it cool. And all those scenarios are incredibly relevant. But that's another key point. When you're looking at these migrations, there's the energy savings that make it attractive, not just to your CFO, not just to your CIO, but now to your CEO, who has these broader sustainability objectives. And the other thing to keep in mind, I'm sure Virtusa, when you look at all of your on-prem networking gear, servers, Virtusa knows the right e-waste disposable practices, because when you do move to the cloud, what am I going to do with all these racks and stacks and hardware, and how do you make sure that's disposed of in an ecologically safe manner, which is not a small issue. So when you look at new things, what is Virtusa doing now with AI is driving a lot of future initiatives? Maybe you could talk about that as some of the future strategies to help clients in combining AI with cloud strategies, with application architecture and cost considerations. I know Virtusa has been on the forefront of building a huge AI practice, and maybe you could describe that a little more detail.
Sure. And I think we have been working on AI for some time. I think generative AI is something that has come in the last year or two. But artificial intelligence and machine learning is something that we have been working on for many years now. We have a dedicated practice for that, and now Gen AI is coming in and expanding that and making things a lot more different from a viewpoint. But one thing, like I mentioned, is enterprise that we are working with, they don't want to just quickly go and implement something because there is Gen AI. They want us to show that, okay, any POC or any MVP or any project that we are developing with them, regardless of which technology stack, which CSP and which cloud provider, what type of benefit and how. Now, I'll just do a quick example of a project that we have implemented recently. So there is a company that we have worked with who is managing physical documents. It's a document management system where they store physical documents for legal purposes. You need some documents to be kept 5 years, 10 years, whatever the requirement, and they're all in a warehouse in if you know the
Sure.
the IKEA type of environment, right at the end, in boxes. One problem that they had was, how do we know when some of the boxes are damaged or not in a proper condition where they need to get replaced? And it only happens, they only find out when someone else is trying to retrieve a box, next to a box that is damaged, and sometimes they report it, sometimes they don't. We implement a solution for that where we brought in a drone which goes and monitors the entire warehouse, takes the relevant photographs and so on. And using the backend Gen AI and artificial intelligence models, it immediately identifies the boxes that have the damages. And then obviously not only that, the boxes have the barcode and so on about which client is this for and so on, where is it physically located. It automatically creates a ticket in the system of record which says there is a box that is damaged like this. Here is a photograph. I have highlighted the area of the box that is damaged. Do a quick review. If you feel that box needs to be replaced now, take that ticket to the next process. So that is, like I said, it can be something that you may not even think that is this even required, but they have seen at least a 30% drop in terms of manual work that they need to do to kind of look at where these damages are. And plus, the difference is now it is being done proactively as opposed to finding out that the documents inside have got damaged because the boxes were damaged outside.
Wow. And I think that's a great example of Virtusa's creativity. I'm sure that it's like the worst scenario where if they need some box, they've got a 500,000 square foot warehouse. They didn't know about a pipe bursting. The papers got damaged. And the one box in the middle of this huge warehouse that they needed, suddenly everyone is up in arms wondering how this could happen. And I think it's a great example of creative uses of drones, AI, and changing jobs. Instead of having people in the warehouse, walk up and down, look around, see what works, you've got people having to be trained in flying the drone around, collecting the data, then creating the right kind of AI image analysis to determine what is a problem situation. And I think that's a great example of creative uses of technology. But it also shows, on a similar note, as you work with companies like Virtusa, it's not so much eliminating jobs when they're putting in place things like cloud and AI. It's working with your team, because I personally believe this. It's just that jobs are going to change fundamentally. But I remember, when people first heard about the cloud, well, my job is racking and stacking servers. My job's going to go away. That absolutely didn't happen. IT spending is booming, except your job, maybe instead of working for your organization, you get hired away by AWS and vice versa. So now the final thing I wanted to ask you about is multi-cloud environments and what your role is. We know you've got a strong practice in relation to AWS, but so many organizations are now going multi-cloud. They're a little nervous about vendor lock-in. They want a little bit of flexibility. Maybe you could talk about the way Virtusa is especially skilled in helping organizations understand different technologies, what works best. Maybe they're acquiring a company, maybe they're an Azure shop, they buy an AWS shop. Maybe talk about your skills in that, because I see that happening a lot in that organizations want to keep Microsoft and AWS and Google honest and have some flexibility.
Yeah, so I think a lot of these small, let's call them startups or small scale, companies will still predominantly remain, a kind of a single or primary cloud. But the medium and the enterprise and the large scale applications are definitely looking at multi-cloud, at least two cloud providers to mitigate their risk. Now, there are two ways that they look at it. In one approach, let's move certain type of applications to AWS, and then let's move another set of type to Azure or to GCP, and that is fine, because that according to our experience and according to their set of applications, it's a little bit more suitable for CSP1, CSP2, CSP3, and we have done that in across America, especially for one of the large telcos in UK, where they started off with AWS, and then they said, okay, now let's bring in Azure, let's bring in GCP, and then let's start moving applications around based on suitability. But if you look at it from another standpoint, for example, Middle East, where cloud in the region, let's say 3-4 years back, there were no regions of AWS or Azure at that time. They knew AWS, Azure, GCP was coming. They did not want to wait until the regions are established, mature enough. They wanted to start the modernization. So they came to us. We were already an existing partner for them. We were doing a lot of engineering and quality assurance work, and they started talking to us. How can we make our applications future ready for the cloud? And obviously, one of the best things that we said was, let's containerize them. Because once you have the applications in the form of a container, then moving it to AWS or moving it to Azure or moving it to GCP is not very difficult. I mean, there is a little bit of work, but there is not much difficult. And the advantage or the side effect, so to speak, is that even if you do decide now to go to AWS, you can very easily move that application to Azure or GCP, because it's the container that runs. It doesn't really know or require to know what is the backend functionality. We did those containers for on-prem, and then we started moving them to AWS and Azure. GCP is still not in the region, but right now AWS and Azure. So we were working with them before their time was even there to start containerizing the applications to make them cloud ready. And that gave them the option of bringing in that multi-cloud scenario where they can work with AWS or Azure or GCP, and then the flexibility of moving things around as and when they need.
That's a great story. And I think that's a perfect example of why organizations are going to Virtusa. It's that forward thinking. It's an understanding of these multi-cloud environments. How do you manage them? I think people are going to increasingly rely upon Virtusa. What happens when you've got multi-AI LLM platforms that are an overlay to your multi-cloud environments, that are an overlay to your hybrid network architecture with on-prem and cloud-based applications? Lots of increased complexity. And I think all of you are well suited, and at least speaking to the folks at Virtusa, just go to virtusa.com or you go to angelbeat.com. We'll put you in touch with Hussain or any of his colleagues, because it is increasingly complicated. And part of the advantage in working with Hussain is you're not reinventing the wheel. They've in many cases been there, done that. And as you've also seen, if you're an existing organization, they've got an ability to work in a very positive, constructive way with your existing integrators. And I'm always a big fan of providing an independent perspective when you're looking at things, not to say you may not be happy and very satisfied with your current integrator, but there's a great deal of value in at least getting an additional perspective given how fast things are changing. Anything else you want to add, Hussain? I found this very interesting, and it just reinforced a lot of positive things that, quite honestly, I've heard about Virtusa from its clients who attend Angelbeat.
No, I think I just want to thank you, Ron, for the opportunity. And as you know, the cloud has enabled us to do things a lot more faster as an underlying technology than what we wanted to do earlier, right? Even whether it's AI, whether it's Gen AI, earlier it would have taken us a lot of time. But now a lot of these things are kind of pre-baked and they are pre-packaging a lot of these things in the AWS platform and in the other cloud service providers. So, cloud is here to stay, right? And how do we ensure that we leverage that across all the transformational and modernization projects that we have to do? Talk to us and we'll figure out jointly with you what would be the most efficient path to go towards that success.
Excellent.
Thanks, Ron.
Remember, go to angelbeat.com, go to virtusa.com. We'll be glad to put you in touch so you can get that free. As he was alluding to, it's not just a proof of concept when they look at the value add that Virtusa provides. It's actual proof. I think you should just sell it not as a POC, it's just a P, because here's the proof, and you'll be able to see that value. Thank you all very much. We look forward to having Hussain speak at a future Angelbeat event. I hope you enjoy these brief video blog interviews. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.
Thank you.